Okay, well, thank you for being here, especially everybody that drove up from different parts of the state. We appreciate it. Um, so we'll go ahead and get started. I just want to see, first of all, is there anybody on the phone listening in so I can just get you down?
Yeah, this is Trent with Americom.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Okay, so first of all, we'll just go around the room and just do quick introductions. I'm Kelly Cole, and I'm the director of the Broadband Outreach Center here in Go Ahead. And this is my boss, Ginger. I think she's been here once before.
Yes, I've come to one meeting before.
And she's new on the floor, so.
Yeah, so Ginger Chin with Go Ahead. Thanks for being here. My name is Emily. I'm with Kelly.
Okay. Oh, great. Awesome. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yeah, we're just gonna head right into our agenda. Some of my updates are a little bit later in the on the agenda. So we'll go ahead and have Public his presentation. He was here a few months ago talking about a wireless test bed application that they have put in, and so he's just going to give us kind of an update of where we are on that.
Thank you. So just
Can you hold and wander?
Yeah. Sorry, I wander. So the context, just quick context here. The program we're talking about is called POWER, PAWR, Platforms for Advanced Wireless Research. This is an NSF initiative to basically enhance wireless and mobile networking in the U.S. And there's basically two parts to it. The first part is about building what they call city-scale platforms to enable wireless and mobile networking research. And then the second part, which will come later, will be money, sort of more traditional NSF funding to do research on these platforms. So that's kind of the context. And in terms of a platform, basically you want to think living lab, right? So it's not meant to provide any real services or anything. It's meant to do research and experimentation, but not in a controlled lab environment. And that's where the city scale comes in, out there in the real world. That's the idea. A little bit more context. So about half of the money is coming from the National Science Foundation. The other half is coming from about 28, and I think there's more now, companies in the space of mobile and wireless. All the suspects that you would expect are there, all the providers, the equipment vendors, and they ponied up the other half of the money. And in return for that, they will have access to this platform to do their own experimentation and research. So the basic idea is to build these platforms, coming in with a city-university partnership leading it, right? And so we went in with Salt Lake City. We have a whole slew of other partners that I'm going to talk about momentarily. So again, the primary focus is core mobile and wireless research, enabling that. But there's, of course, a lot of other things that are not part of core wireless necessarily, but require wireless, or is enhanced by wireless, or impose new requirements on mobile and wireless infrastructures. And so that's kind of how I think of this. There's a part of this is the core functionality, and then there's sort of a second tier of research around the services and applications that would benefit from that or provide new requirements for that. So just briefly, timeline. They came out with a RFP in April. There was a preliminary that was submitted. We submitted a full proposal end of July. So right now we're waiting to hear whether we make it through to the next round. So we're supposed to hear by the end of the month, so hopefully sometime next week. If we make it through to the finalist round, there will be site visits around October, November timeframe. And they will actually, the reviewers will come out here and spend 2 days with us and ask questions about our proposal, and they actually want to go around and see some of the sites that we propose to deploy this. And then if we get funded, I mean, we'll know by Q1 next year, and then the funding is basically for 5 years. It's to build and operate this platform for an initial 5-year period. Now, beyond that, so this is kind of interesting for NSF, is that they really have an emphasis in the solicitations to make the platform sustainable. And you'll see that in a second, right? They want to know, well, how are you going to get people to pay money to use that? And so we came up with, I think, a reasonable plan for that, and we have a pretty good sort of future plan in that direction. So just briefly why we think we can play. So we here, I mostly mean the Flux Research Group at the University of Utah. We build test beds. We have 3 test beds that I list here. I won't go into the detail. We do research in the space as well, but really, I think that the thing that makes this possible, we have excellent partners, and I'll talk about some of those in the slides coming up. So a little bit just about the components, what they wanted, what they asked for in the proposal. So first of all, well, you have to enable on your platform wireless and mobile research. Well, what is that? Well, I don't know. It depends, right? It depends on whoever wants to do that research, what their interest is. And so the key thing here is to have a really, really flexible platform so that we can enable a broad range of research. And basically, well, I won't go into that now. And then again, there's the broader research around that, you know, things like IoT, smart cities, smart building, safety, public safety, connected vehicles, and on and on. So there's sort of the more applications and services aspect. I kind of alluded to this already. They really want to see local involvement, both local companies and the community, economic development. So they're looking for that broader impact off the bat. Okay. So that's the context. Our proposal, we called it Powder, which we thought would be a good name for a Utah proposal. We actually, you know, made it fit to a name. Sorry, I'm standing in front of this. So that's our proposal. So in sort of the cartoon picture of what we propose to build, and I'll just go by the numbers here. We are basically going to deploy base stations. You know, so think of these as kind of like the cell towers out there, except ours will be programmable. Right? So basically, the plan here is to have what we call a software-defined infrastructure end-to-end. So from the handsets through the base stations, through the core network, into the data center, software-defined, so that we get that flexibility. So from the base stations, fiber network going back, we have what we call here edge compute. So think of that as computing, storage resources that are really close to the edge, so that we have really low latency, really high capacity here. Right? That enables a whole bunch of research scenarios off the bat. And then fiber infrastructure going back. So think of this as sort of more of a metropolitan data center for us. This would be the University of Utah Downtown Data Center. 5 is just we have existing facilities, so we're going to tie in with that. 6 is just meant to say, well, we're going to get onto the internet, more specifically Internet 2. And you know, we have remote facilities already. So think of this as sort of our fixed infrastructure. Now, of course, with wireless and mobility specifically, typically you want things to move around. Not always, but mobility is a big part of the space. And so the problem is, how do you do that if this is a test bed? And so the plan we came up with, and it's not unique, others have done similar things, is basically we want to put our mobile devices on things that move, right? So couriers, essentially. And so the first instance, we want to put them on shuttle buses at the U, and they're kind of a really nice carrier for us in that sense. I'll talk about that later. We also imagine, giving this out to people if they want to, maybe they want to drive on a specific route or walk on a specific route. So we'll have portable units. We also want to put these on city vehicles, the city being a key partner of ours, and then on other vehicles on campus. Like the campus has a whole bunch of vehicles that kind of stay within the campus environment, so that's a good carrier for us. And then finally, we also, to enable that broader services and applications, we're also going to have sensing, very flexible sensing units, right, where these could, again, be handed out to people, or we might put them on the vehicles, and they can enable sort of applications in that space. Yes, please. No, go ahead now, yes. Thank you, yes. So overall 4 is the plan. In this initial solicitation, 2. Okay, that's the stated plan, but they also alluded to the fact that, they might change that depending on what they get, right? If they get a bunch of really good proposals now, they might select 3 off the bat and then 1 later and so on. We don't know. We know just because we know some of the people who have submitted. And so we know of about, us included, 6. And there's probably a few we don't know about. So we would say, guess, like between 6 and 10, probably. Yes, we actually talked about that. So the problem with drones is, and we might still include that, but at the moment it's not part of our plan. And the reason for that is it's kind of hard to make that predictable and to make that, I mean, a key thing for running a platform like this is most of it should be automated, right? And so we couldn't figure out exactly how to do that with drones. But yeah, totally valid point. Yes, ma'am. Oh, that's fantastic. Great.
Are you confined to like Salt Lake City?
We are at this point mostly confined to, and not even all of Salt Lake. So, yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, and certainly there is. I mean, we have people who look at this and say, "Oh, this is interesting. We might use this as a template for things we want to do," which is actually really cool. All right, let me move along. So this is showing all the, and the map doesn't come out this nicely, but this is the University of Utah campus, and this shows all the shuttles there. And so by using the shuttles, we actually get a really nice mobility pattern. And the nice thing about shuttles is, well, they go on route, and they go on regularly. And so you get this not entirely repeatable, but at least predictable mobility, right? So they do their routes every 15 minutes or whatever the case may be. So this is a big part of our predictable mobility. And then, like I said before, we also want to put it on other vehicles that might be more realistic, provide more realistic movement. And so just, this, and again, the colors don't come out this well, but we did a preliminary analysis of the radio propagation to cover that area where the shuttles are. And this is, at a specific frequency, and we want to, again, be very flexible there in terms of the frequencies we want to support. So overall coverage, this is what we're looking at. So University of Utah campus, part of the downtown area, and then sort of a corridor in between in terms of at least the initial coverage. So a key thing for us is to leverage existing infrastructure, right? If we were to build this, I mean, well, just to put this in perspective, and I know you guys work with big budgets, right? For us, 100 million divided by 4 is a lot of money as an academic institution. But if you start building these things out, well, you can eat that up really quickly. And so the only way we can really get there is by leveraging existing infrastructure. And so that comes kind of in two flavors. The main part is the backhaul. And I'll show the map that we came up with in a second. But we basically want to backhaul all of this with a fiber infrastructure. And so UETN is a key partner for us there. Of course, the U itself, we have fiber on campus. Salt Lake City has fiber. We got support from Utopia to patch this in. And so we have a really nice plan to build out this fiber infrastructure by sort of combining all these pieces. And similarly, for the radio equipment, well, we need to go on rooftops. And so we basically want to leverage places where there are antennas already. Now, it turns out that I mentioned the industry consortium early on. So Crown Castle is part of the industry consortium. Crown Castle is a company, if you don't know, that that's what they do as a business. They provide space for radio equipment. And so it turns out that they have really good deployments on campus and in Salt Lake City. And so we're going to leverage that heavily for our radio deployment. And then, of course, other places as well. So UETN has fiber going through a couple of buildings, and we've been talking to the people there, places where the U has facilities, and so we're going to try to leverage that. Yes? Yes? So we will have a dense deployment on a subset of our, and I think I have a figure of that coming in. In the general, think of it more as, macro deployment, so not necessarily small cell. They are not proposing. They leave it up to us. We have to find spectrum, which, yes.
Sorry.
I totally, yes. So not impossible, but hard. So there's a couple of things that is working in our favor. So number one, and as you work for AT&T, you'll probably be aware of this, in the 3.5 gigahertz range, they've come up with this tiered infrastructure. I mean, so 3.5 is the Navy's radar spectrum, right? But to enable experimentation, they said, well, let's come up with this tiered architecture, where yes, the incumbents, i.e. the Navy, if they want to use it, they use it. That's the point. And even in places where the Navy is present on the coast, they're not using it all the time. And so the basic idea, so there's a lot of SEC to make more flexible use of spectrum. And so this is sort of the first real-world example of that. In the 3.5 gigahertz range, they came up and they said, okay, well, if the Navy is using it, you better back off. If they're not using it, there's 2 tiers below that. You can opportunistically use that. And so that, some of those things count in our favor. The other thing is that the FCC is really trying to make it easier to make use of spectrum. So, for example, when we started working in the space, you can get experimental licenses pretty easy. So we have one of our test beds is a wireless infrastructure. So we looked at spectrums that are not being used, went to the FCC, we got experimental licenses, and they said, sure, go ahead, use it, but get permission from whoever owns it. Okay? So I won't name names, but there were like 6 companies who owned this. We sent letters to them. One of them responded. Okay? So why would they? They were not using the spectrum, but they wouldn't allow us to use it either. So what the SEC is doing is there's a new, what is called a program license that would basically flip the power balance there. in the sense that now if you get that program license, you would post on a website and say, hey, you incumbent, we plan to use this spectrum at this place for this experiment in the next week. If you have a problem, tell us. Okay? And so, yes, spectrum is absolutely, oh, there's one more thing, sorry. There's also with what is called an innovation zone. The details on that is a little bit sketchy, but basically the idea is that an area like a city, for example, or a campus might apply to become an innovation zone. And if they are in an innovation zone, it becomes easier to use spectrum experimentally. This is an FCC. All of these are FCC programs. Okay, so this is a long-winded way to say, yes, you're right. Spectrum is absolutely an issue, but there are actually at the core changes to make this easier. They have not. No, they have not. Yeah. Now, this testbed is primarily, we're building the testbed for others to use, right? And AT&T is one of the consortium partners that you might expect, right? Now, the other thing is they might come in with their own license, right, and use it, right? So a spectrum license, right? And so there is this is a little bit gray in terms, but oh, I would love to talk to that. All right, let me move along. No, that was actually at a lower frequency. So that was not 3.5. And I would have to, I mean, we did so many different ones. I just picked one to show a picture. I don't remember which one that was. All right. This is basically, and again, sorry, the colors don't come out that well. This is the fiber backbone that we hope to construct. So on campus, this is a combination of University of Utah fiber. Some of those fibers are actually leased to Crown Castle, so it's already going to their rooftops, and so we'll make use of that. The black peak here, we have a support letter from UDOT to be able to make use of their fiber. And this is actually, so I talked about, this is where we plan to have a dense deployment on campus, making use of partly our fiber, partly UDOT fiber. Then going downtown is basically UETN fiber. We have our data center is down here, and so that goes all the way there. The UETN fiber also goes up here to a couple of buildings. This will be a new deployment to give us coverage over that corridor. And then the yellow color here is a combination of Utopia fiber and Crown Castle fiber to give us the coverage in the downtown area. So this is basically the big picture plan in terms of the fiber infrastructure. This is just more detail on that dense deployment. So I'm just going to skip that, but it's just a small part of the campus where there is a specific shuttle going around. Yes, please. No, we are not using their DAS system. So our infrastructure, where we only use their facilities, as it were, right? So there's no integration with them or anything. I mean, yes, we will use their rooftops. They, as far as I know, don't have DAS deployment plans here. They have DAS deployment planned in the downtown area. Okay. So that's sort of infrastructure-wise in terms of functionality, and I'll try to go over this real quick. I said this already, right? We need flexibility. So basically software-defined end-to-end. From the handset through the base station, through the core, basically as flexible as we can. Right? So software-defined radios, software-defined networking, cloud, network function virtualization, all those things built in end-to-end. We also, so we want to have a base framework that is really flexible. We also envision that what we have will not suit what people want to do research on. So we have this bring your own research style approach, and we want to enable that everywhere. this is a really busy slide, but just, this is kind of the way we think of the test beds that we build. It's sort of a Lego block approach, right? So think of the things up here, these are the Lego blocks, right? So there's hardware and there's software, and then we provide interfaces where you can come in and say, oh, I want to combine these, right? And then we have a control framework that basically goes off and instantiates that for you. And this is not vaporware. I mean, we have this. Our current test beds are all in a controlled environment in a data center. So yes, certainly for us, going outside would introduce new challenges. But in terms of the basic, well, re-imaging things, partitioning things, providing users access, this is an actual interface of what one of our current systems look like. This is the portal you would go to. This is the view you see once your experiment is instantiated, and then you can have remote access to all of the nodes in your infrastructure. This is just an example, and the details here are not that important, but it's just basically trying to show that within this infrastructure you can have multiple instances, either for different experimenters or for the same experimenter, right? So this, and this is the example of the 3.5 gigahertz. If you want to do experimentation there, you might have a SAS, Spectrum Access System. I think I always forget the acronym. This is the thing that tells you whether, at a particular point in time, you can use that spectrum, right? So you'd have a client that talks to a database and says, hey, I'm over here, can I use Spectrum? So imagine this is a tier 2 user, right? And they have a LTE file network that makes use of that spectrum opportunistically. There might be something that actually monitors the spectrum to populate the database. So that would be the second system. And then you can emulate a tier 1 user. Right? You can have something there that switches this on transmission at a certain frequency, and then you see, oh, do my system work correctly? Does it back off at the right time? How quickly does that work? Again, I mean, it's just an example to give you a flavor of, well, we can have this flexibility on the endpoint, on the base stations, on the base stations and in the core. I'm almost through. It's just a list of research that we think we can enable. I won't go through that now. In terms of the team, I kind of mentioned this already. The cities, of course, are our key partner, as is UETN. Without those, wouldn't have been possible. We really have fantastic other partners. So along the lines of innovation and economic development, a long list of people who provided us support letters. I maybe want to call out UStar specifically. So UStar said that they would kind of promote the wireless and mobility as part of their existing programs. And, you know, that's kind of a big deal for us. Like I said already, we have support from UDOT, both as a potential user and as in-kind contribution in terms of making use of pieces of the infrastructure. Technology partners. So we planning to use the library. Federated Wireless is actually a company that works in this 3.5 gigahertz range. So they provided us support, or they will provide us access to their SAS system. I think I covered all of those. And then we're really excited about this. We started reaching out to companies, many of them are local, to say, hey, would you be interested in using this system? And so the way we did that was to say, would you sign up to be a beta user? Right, sort of saying, okay, I'll use it at least once. And for us, that's great, right? Because every time you have a user on a test bed, you learn something. But there's also this, well, if this turns out to be useful for them, maybe they'll come back, right? And so this is sort of part of our long-term strategy. So some of these are local, Ubiquiti, L3, Vivint. Federated Wireless is not local. Let me just spend 30 seconds on ATOS. So ATOS, you may or may not know, didn't, is the technology company for the Olympics. And so one of the guys on our team who kind of did the outreach or the economic development part for us met a guy from ATOS and said, well, you know, if you had a very flexible test bed and you think of the technology you would want to deploy at the Olympics in 12 years, what would you do with that? And this guy goes, oh, that's great. Okay, and so they signed up to be one of our users, which is kind of a big deal for us. And there's a tie-in, of course, with Olympic Legacy Foundation, Utah Sports Commission, and then we have a long list of potential academic users. That's pretty much all I have. Any other questions? I know people have asked questions already, and I'm already over. No, so a requirement for this whole test bed from an SEC perspective would be a big red shutdown button. So to answer that question in more detail, basically what we're planning to do on each of those radio devices, we will be monitoring what frequency they're actually using, right? And so the idea is when you use the platform, you come in and you say, oh, I'm going to use 800 megahertz or whatever frequency. And of course, you would have to have a license to do that, so the whole spectrum thing. But then we're also going to monitor that, right? And if we see that you're on a frequency that is not what you said you're going to, we will shut you down. So that's sort of the first level of protection. But then as a secondary level, there will be operational procedures for this big red button, right? So if someone comes in and says, well, there's something wrong in your infrastructure, right? We will not ask questions. We will shut it down and then ask questions. And that's an FCC requirement. Any other questions? If I can use 10 more seconds for a shameless advertising, we are also hosting MobiCom in October. So MobiCom is an international conference. It's the premier conference in mobile and wireless networking. We're actually hosting it at Snowbird, which is kind of exciting. So we have part of that MobiJob, which is this career event. I have a bunch of local companies already signed up to come to this. If you have any interest, I would love to have more local companies present there to kind of show Silicon Slopes to this community that will be coming from all over the world. I think it's.
What is the date on that?
It's October 16th, I think, through, is that a Monday? Yeah. So it's the week of October 16th. And the event will be on Tuesday. Thank you. And I will unfortunately not be able to stay for the rest.
That's okay. Thank you so much. Barbara, do you mind if I switch you and Kelly, because he has a call at 11? Okay. So Kelly, do you want to come up and?
Good morning. My name is Kelly Jorgensen. I'm the Field Office Director for the HUD office here in Salt Lake. I'll try not to use too many acronyms. Housing and Urban Development. We're a federal agency, and we have one office in Utah here in Salt Lake, and we cover the entire state from here. So I wanted to talk today about two different things. The first is a program that HUD has called Connect Home Nation. And the second thing is I wanted to tell you about a newly formed digital inclusion partnership that we've put together over the last few months. So let me start with Connect Home Nation. This is an initiative that HUD has, and the purpose of it is to bridge the digital divide for the folks living in our HUD-assisted housing. We have a disproportionate number of families, especially families with children, who do not have internet access in their homes. So that's the goal of the initiative. It began in 2015 as a pilot program. We had 28 communities that participated in the pilot. And then we weren't sure if we were going to be able to keep the program when the administration changed. But fortunately, they kept the program. And we're now expanding it to 30 more communities throughout the nation. So it's a great program. It provides a lot of resources for the communities. And in July, they actually opened up the competition again for folks to apply across the nation. And Salt Lake City applied and was selected to be one of those 30 communities. So we're excited about that. That was just announced last month, so we're still trying to get up and going on that. The second thing I wanted to talk about is our local partnership. So back in the spring, we had a meeting with all of our housing authorities. We have 19 in Utah. And we also invited some other stakeholders. We have the public housing folks and also the multifamily developers that also have a lot of HUD-assisted housing. And we provided information on Connect Home at that time, and we also had Comcast come and present on their Internet Essentials program. So from that, there were some people that were especially interested in moving forward with this. The Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County housing authorities, which are two largest housing authorities in the state, and also Utah Nonprofit Housing Corporation was part of that regional partnership. So we contacted one of the Connect Home Nation recipients that were in the first round, the pilot program, Denver Housing Authority, and had a good conversation with them. They've done some excellent work in Denver, and they put us in contact with an organization called PCs for People. So we brought them into our partnership, and PCs for People basically take refurbished computers and provide them to low-income folks at an affordable price. Great organization, and they hadn't expanded to Utah at the time we first started talking with them. They were actually in the process of looking at 5 different cities to expand to. And because we had already formed kind of an infancy partnership, they're on the ground, and some of the other communities did not have that. They chose Salt Lake to extend their services to. So we're really excited about that. You guys may know, I'm not sure if we have other companies in Utah that do the same thing. I'm not aware of any, at least not on the scale that PCs for People do that. So anyway, as the partnership worked together, we're putting together an event. And the event's going to be October 13th, 10 a.m. So I can invite everybody. I'll send Kelly more information that you can send out. But basically what we're going to do is PCs for People has 200 computers.
Where's it at?
It's going to be at the Housing Authority of Salt Lake City, which is 1776 Southwest Temple. So they made a commitment to do 200 computers, which we are going to distribute to our residents who receive housing assistance from the Housing Authority. And along the process, they came up with another 100 computers. So we have 300 computers. And Comcast and Mobile Beacon provided additional funding to buy down the price of those computers. So we're going to be providing these computers. Families are going to pay $20 per computer. Desktop, so they'll get the CPU, the monitor, keyboard, mouse, and also some software on the computer. Mobile Beacon is donating hotspots, and they also a partner with Sprint, and they have a service, wireless service on internet that they're going to be offering to folks. It's $10 a month. It's about the same as Comcast, except it's wireless. So this should give a lot of the low-income folks, especially those with children, a lot of opportunities. As you all know, when they're in school and when you're at home, all of us kind of take advantage or are used to having internet access. And a lot of these families, once the kids leave school, they don't have access to the internet. And of course, there's public libraries and things that they can use, but there's always a transportation problem if they want to stay after school. The parents have to then come and get them and so forth. So it's not real practical. And so providing this in their homes is going to make a huge difference in their lives. We've also got some training with the school district that we're going to do in terms of the portals they use to do their homework and communicate with teachers. Salt Lake City Library has come on board as a partner, and they're going to be providing a lot of our educational classes.
Good morning. Still morning, right?
Good morning.
I get confused these days. So many things to do. My name is Barbara Hollister. I am the program manager for the UTAP program within the Department of Workforce Services, and we do the eligibility for the landline. And that is going to transition, as I hope most of you know. So I have Brody here with me. He's the manager over our eligibility system that Department of Workforce Services uses, and he has been working with USAC on the interface connection. And so I'm going to let Brody talk for a minute about that interface connection and what's been going on. We've been testing since what, July? Getting ready to do more testing starting in October and transitioning at the end of the year. And then after he's done, and please feel free to ask questions, I'll give you a little update on our transition plan.
Give just like a background of like the federal eligibility.
Changes?
Yeah.
The changes? Okay, so Lifeline and UTAP determination was done physically, hard copy, here with the Department of Workforce Services, and that was brought through housing development that DWS at one time consumed, I guess is a good word. So that transitioned through a few different partners within DWS and ended up landing with me. So we continued to do the hard copy. So customer sends in a physical application. Through the physical application, we would determine if they were already eligible for other services. So the Department of Workforce Services does food stamp or SNAP, Medicaid, TANF, which is a financial program, and child care services, along with other services, UI, housing, things along that nature. So we're already looking at low income eligibility for those programs, and the UTAP and Lifeline programs fit within that same federal poverty level. So it was determined that if they're already eligible for one of those other programs, SNAP, Medicaid, those are the two biggies, then we do what they call categorically eligible for UTAP and Lifeline, meaning we don't have to ask the customer for anything. We just say, yeah, they're eligible. And then the staff would compile a spreadsheet and then send that spreadsheet on to the phone carriers and say, these individuals are eligible for the Lifeline UTAP discount, I guess is a good word. And then if there was any questionable situations like with the phone carriers, then they would contact us. We'd work through that and sometimes through the customer. This is transitioning. As of, it's actually the end of this year, but we started a year ago. In October, we start doing more production, live data exchange. It was discussed at the federal level because a lot of you, I know, within your organizations were doing the eligibility. It was very dissected. So you might have wireless carriers over here doing eligibility in different states. It might be landline carriers over here doing eligibility. The federal government decided through coordination with USAC that USAC would be doing the determinations for the entire nation. For landline, wireless, and broadband services, they decided to bring broadband services into scope. At that time, they are transitioning landlines kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, dissolving them or end of life on the landlines. I think it's a 5-year transition, and then no longer will the landlines receive that discount. Just knowing that, you know, population is going more towards wireless and broadband services are needed. So USAC at the federal level has been building a database. And in this database, they are compiling the information, and all of these individuals who are now wanting this discounted service for either the Lifeline wireless or the Lifeline broadband service will contact USAC. So USAC coming to Utah, because we're so great at technology, and I am going to brag about that because we really, really are. Started with
one of the first states
that
will be able to
yes.
be verified.
We were
because of our technology.
right, And so we met with them and helped them determine what kind of interface information do they need and thresholds and things along this nature. So for the last 6 months prior to us setting up the test region and everything, we identified what that criteria was. And then starting in July, of course, we had our technical folks over here implementing, building, doing all of that. We started testing with them on a very limited scale, you know, making sure things don't break or that the data that we need going back and forth is working correct, getting the right responses, and then we step it up to a higher level. Let's do the production. And I'm going to let Brody talk to you about what that data is, because I could misrepresent, and I don't want to do that. He's been working specifically with USAC probably, what now, 6 months directly. So what they do is after they get the customer's information, then they send an interface to us, and they ask us, are they eligible for those programs, those low-income programs that we're already doing eligibility for over here. We have 600 people that do eligibility on these other programs. They hit our system, and they get a response back that says yes or no, basically. From there, then they do whatever it is that they need to do to continue on for giving the Lifeline or broadband benefit. So I'm going to So it's a good transition over to Brody so that he can explain to you what it is that they're actually asking us for and what we're giving them back.
Okay, yeah. It's really basic. All they're doing is a web service to our database. They'll send us over the last name, date of birth, last 4 of the social, and a zip code. Those are the 4 things that I've passed over to us. If in the database they're currently open for Medicaid and or food stamps, we just respond with a yes. And if they're either the data's wrong or they're not currently open, then we just pass back a no. And that's, I know it's simple, but and then that way they can determine whatever they need to do. I think we have 35,000 current Utah recipients of the Lifeline program. So it'll really streamline their process for reviews and new applications. And then if for whatever reason there's a no or a fails, then they have some sort of manual process that they verify. So.
And so I thought Shauna would be here, but I don't see her. So I don't know for sure what the USAC process is. However, I have been in conversation with Shauna on things that DWS customers can do to help support USAC. So because it's a limited amount of information, social names, these types of things, maybe, and last name, maybe, you know, something's off, whatever, customer was closed for a month, now they're back open again. These things happen a lot with our customer base. We have a online portal that our customers use called MyCase, and we have in there a 24-month report of benefits. So customers can at any time print that out and submit that to USAC, and that would be automatically approved for benefits. Also, streamlining the process for the customer. What they're going to be doing with other states, I'm not aware. The intent is that once they get all of the states on board, the possibility of fraud will go way down because of the customers applying in multiple states for the same benefits and the states not talking to each other. So that's really what the intent is on this. So let me ask if anybody has any questions before I go into transition time. Yeah.
Correct.
If they're receiving benefits. If they're receiving benefits.
Yeah, so they'll check to see if they're a customer in the database, and then the second check is if they're eligible for food stamps and or Medicaid. Yep.
Based on, yeah, and those changed last year. We were looking at HEAD and other services, but those changed last year, and I think because of the direction that they wanted to go.
USAC is, and from what I understand, they're taking our code and passing it to those other states. So there's a uniform way that USAC's developing on their side so that everybody's following the same platform. So that would be nice.
Yeah. No, he's getting a pat on the back
Yeah.
for a good job done. Maybe I'll take him to lunch.
It's sounding simple, but in the initial conversations, it was really complicated.
Yeah.
Well, it is
It really,
complicated.
and the other states, especially, there are several that I think are gonna have
But
really.
the advantage that we have is this is the technology we're already using.
Yeah.
And so that's
We've
what
been
gives
in
us a
this
leg up.
space for doing it for other purposes for 12 years now. There are states out there that aren't even in that space yet. And so this is a good place for them to be able to start and then transferring and sharing that code saves USAC a lot of time, a lot of time. I have no idea on how quickly they think they're gonna roll it all out, but yes. And so for us, starting in October, they'll be ramping up to more of a production environment, real-time performance testing, so that they can see how much it's impacting their database, how much it's impacting our database, and get some thresholds from that. We anticipate that January, they will be doing full-on eligibility. So we will be doing a transition plan, and Shauna should be writing notice from the commissioner to speak to that. What DWS is willing to do is we did our research early this year so that we could be through our research process by the end of November. So we're currently in that, working through our customers right now on the research process. So we anticipate November, December, we'll get those outliers that got the denial notice, you're not eligible anymore, so that we can work through them, help them, assist them along. Starting in January, our phone number coming in for eligibility will be changed from an answering phone to a message. And we will be educating customers now. This eligibility is done at USAC, and we will be giving them the phone number, and then they will be contacting them. That will also happen for the phone carriers. We will not be answering the phone for any of the phone carriers, as that will transition. Any issues that are going on will transition to Shauna and USAC. However, we know that sometimes things blow up. So we have a contingency emergency plan that if we need to, we can extend any portion of that till the end of March. So that's our plan for right now. What I have here is my business card. So if you would like my business card, I'll just transfer it around the room. I'm more than happy while we're going through this transition that you can contact me, and I will be the focal point between Shauna and USAC. If I need to get Brody, if I need to get my eligibility involved or whatever, I'll be your main contact. That way it's simple, it's easy, and we can triage whatever it is we have to triage. I don't anticipate anything's going to break. It's going to go smoothly, wonderfully, perfectly. I have all the faith in the world.
Good.
So I believe Shauna is also sending out going to be writing physical letters to all the carriers so that they have information on this transition. It's going to be great. I promise.
No, and they're so good that we had some initial conversations and you guys took it over and it's gone really smoothly, so I appreciate that.
It's nice to know that all those other mistakes we made like 5-10 years ago have paid off.
Okay. So we have kind of a new attendee for the advisory council. This is John Osborne, and he runs Virtual Academy, which is essentially the online high school.
Yeah, I'll get into a little bit
And
more of
so
your
he's
course.
going to do an overview of, and especially talk a little bit about how to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as Kelly said, my name is John Osborne, and I represent Utah Virtual Academy. We're an online charter school. We serve grades K through 12, and our students are throughout the entire state of Utah. And it's not homeschool; it's school from home. We have a curriculum that we use from a managing company located in Virginia, and students attend live class sessions every single day with a schedule that they keep to, and our teachers are also located throughout the entire state, and they're able to teach from their homes as well. So, as you can surmise, broadband services and internet are offering a lot of opportunities to students that they may not have had, as well as economic opportunities for our teachers to be able to teach an environment. So I have a couple of videos. I want to share with some of you the stories of some of our students and why virtual education works for them in a situation that their previous brick and mortar school hasn't worked for them. So the first is a student named Dallin, who is 12 years old, and he's about to graduate with his high school diploma as well as his associate's degree in anticipation into the University of Utah. And he was allowed to be able to go at a speed because he attended a virtual academy. Yeah.
Four grades, and here where we live, the high schools wouldn't accept me in because I'm too young. So I had to go online, and it was the best decision of my life. Being able to do online school has given me so many new opportunities. In my free time, because I have a lot, I've been able to work on large programming projects as well as take care of many animals, and I get to work at my own pace, which is great. Being able to work at my own pace has given me the time to do those things because I'm a fast worker naturally, and so that gives me lots of free time. And even though there's not much social interaction involved with being online, you can still do extracurricular activities in the amount of free time that you have. Concurrent enrollment as well has been like the best thing that I've ever gotten to do. Going to college has been so great for me and has helped me to learn a lot of new things. By the time I graduate high school, I'm going to have my high school diploma and associate's degree. And so I'll be able to transfer right into the University of Utah and start on my major. Because of all these things, I think that online schooling is a great opportunity and usually better than brick and mortar schools for students.
Sorry about that. Ringing noise. So he's 12 years old. Yeah, and as he stated, so our school is a school of choice, so they don't come naturally because of where they live geographically. All the students choose to come to our school for various different reasons, and believe me, the reasons are all across the board. They come because of intense anxiety, depression, a lot of bullying in their previous education experience. We had just had a girl come into our office 2 days ago that she was in danger of being taken away from her parents because when her parents would drop her off at school, she wouldn't go, and so she essentially was truant. So state rules, she went to truancy court with her parents, and the parents were going to take her away because in their mind, the parent was the reason she wasn't going to school. It was because she was bullied and she didn't want to be in her environment. So they transitioned to a virtual academy, and it's really interesting to hear their experience. She's a straight A student, on a fast track to law school. She really can excel academically, but because of environment and social pressure, she wasn't quite there. And so that's just one of the opportunities that comes because of virtual education. So our school's been around for 10 years. When we first opened, we had an enrollment cap of 500 students, and now we're at just over 2,000 students. So we've seen growth. About half our students are in high school, and where they have a lot of options, credit recovery, being able to graduate early. We recently started doing concurrent enrollment where we've partnered with the Salt Lake Community College, Dixie State, and Snow College, where our students are able to, so similar to all college students, they're able to attend those college classes via their computer and get that college credit. We have about 20 students doing that, and they'll be earning 122 college credits this semester. We've recently become a STEM designated school as well, and we're the only online school to be able to receive that STEM designation, which is a pretty neat opportunity and offers our students an opportunity to learn in those STEM areas. Additionally, we have a full-time school and a part-time school, so students are able to attend their local high school as well as attend with us and do certain credits or do a certain number of credits with us and a certain number of credits with their high school. This works really well for athletes who want to participate in their local school, but as well as attend and kind of go forward with their academics as well. This map kind of displays, as I mentioned, our students are throughout the entire state. If you can see this, I'm not sure how well it displays. Screen dots represent where our students are located. So as you can see, there's a heavy concentration in the Salt Lake and Davis and Utah counties, particularly Salt Lake and Davis counties. A large majority of our students live in the Ogden area, actually. But they do extend everywhere, and you're paying particular attention to these smaller green dots that are in rural areas. We have, as I mentioned, our students have all sorts of different stories, and many of them don't have the transportation or the ability to attend for family reasons. There's so many are able to attend their local and regular brick and mortar school, and so because of broadband services, they're able to get a quality education from an accredited school from the comfort of their own home and be able to be more individualized in their personal education needs. And because of the broadband services, our teachers are also are able to develop meaningful relationships with those students that are so far around. Because of the virtual nature of our school, we feel like we're able to recruit the best talent as well. I mean, obviously, it's not your typical teaching environment, but we aren't limited to teachers who only live in the Salt Lake Valley, but we have very talented teachers throughout the entire state, and some who are living in rural Utah who would be teaching at a 1A school, which is nothing wrong with that. I love that. But they're able to expand their influence and influence other students. This slide represents, this is what our learning platform looks like. As I mentioned, our students have an actual class schedule that they need to attend. From 8:30 to 9:30, they're in English. From 9:30 to 10:30, they're in math. And this is a program we use called Blackboard Collaborate. In that black screen at the top, our teacher is on a webcam and teaches the lesson and displays their slides on the white screen here. Students are, due to FERPA, students aren't listed, their names aren't listed, but it's listed participant 1, participant 2, and our teachers have access to understand who that is. But they're able to get classroom participation, students using the tools to raise their hand, hop on the microphone, answer questions, and kind of build relationships with their other students, with their teacher, even from afar.
So the students don't know who each other are. Is that kind of the privacy?
Yep. Yeah. Yep. So we do ensure they're in their privacy, and so our students are also not on a webcam either due to privacy, but they can they chat and see with one another. And it's really interesting to understand the importance of social interaction. We do have various events throughout the state throughout the year. We'll partner with a few other online schools and hold prom up to the state capitol, just like many brick and mortar schools will. And it's interesting to how excited they are to see their classmates face to face, and like, oh, hey, we're in biology together, and they don't have much interaction besides that, but they're just so excited to see each other during these events.
What's the benefits of online schooling?
Oh.
You don't work at your own
due to time, this is just another video of our students. Are you sure? Okay. There's another one of our students who has been able to excel and move faster through schooling because of online education. And obviously, I'm going to brag about our top-notch students. So we have a wide range on our demographic slide. 52% of our students are free and reduced lunch, and so they're in rough socioeconomic circumstances, but they are able to excel. We have teen moms, students who struggle in school, everything. But it's always fun to see these students who are really excelling. Oh. I guess we're just going to end it anyway. All right. Won't play for some reason. That's fine. Yeah, questions? Yeah. Correct. Requirement. It's able to work across. I'm not exactly sure what the need. We haven't had any issues. I guess whatever comes standard, I would expect. Our managing company does for those free and reduced lunch students. They do provide laptops or desktops to those families. So I guess I'm not really sure what the broadband speed that they require. Teacher-student ratio, so there's about probably around 40 to 50 students in a classroom, and so that is a challenge to be able to, in an hour's period, be able to interact and have everyone participate in a meaningful way, but I guess not all students will want to participate, but we try to keep the ratio pretty small so our teachers will teach more often, but to less students. Yeah. Say that again. We will subsidize based on if our students attend regularly, and if they've been enrolled with us for the entire year, we'll subsidize internet at the end of the year. Yeah. All of them. We test the ACT, and all of our students recommend that. So the accountability system for the state accountability system is based a lot on our end of year test stage, and that's an interesting point because we tend there's just so much you can evaluate in terms of what type of students we get. We kind of separate into our K through 8, and that school is middle of the road and is pretty typical. Our high school academic performance as a whole is fairly low, which I don't think accurately represents, but because so much of that is based on the end of the year, and as I'm sure you're aware of the opt-out movement throughout the country. A lot of our students' parents choose to opt them out of testing. Our opt-out rate is just a little bit less than 50%. For example, in our third grade, we have about 80 students, but our accountability grade for third grade was based on 18 of them who chose to test. And so it's hard to get a good indication. But in terms of state accountability, our high school is towards the bottom. Yeah, so we operate under the state charter board, and then we have our own school board. So we kind of operate under their dictation. It is. Yep, it is free. It's just like going to your local elementary school or your local charter school. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I wanted to do just next on the agenda really briefly, an update on the FCC's Broadband Deployment Advisory Committee, or Advisory Council, I have it, the committee. So we've met twice in DC in person so far. There's a lot of conference calls going on. The next meeting will be on November 9th at the FCC. And for those of you, I don't know if you've been following those proceedings or not, but essentially the committee was created to do a few things. So it's a pretty narrow focus. So there's 5 subcommittees working under the main committee, and so they have pretty specific tasks. So there is a model municipal code subcommittee. So they are looking at finding broadband-friendly municipal code practices around the country, putting those together, and the idea being it being sort of a modular document that cities can pull ordinances for different topics. And then there's also a state model code group that has a similar task that I'm on. So as the vice chair, I'm only on one subcommittee. Most people are on 2 subcommittees. So I'm on the state committee. So we've been meeting regularly, and so you'll expect, there was a lot of discussion in the last in-person meeting that it's not meant to be anything that cities are obligated to do, but it's meant to provide some code language for cities that want to use it. And I think there's a lingering question on what the next step is once we come up with these documents. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not purview to that. I haven't been told anything beyond that. There is some conversation that it could tie into the idea of, there's been talk of gigabit opportunity zones where they would do tax incentives that Chairman Pai has talked about. And I don't know if they're going to kind of work those 2 ideas together or not. The former chair, they just changed the chair out because the former chair is no longer with the business that she was with formerly, but she had asked if it was appropriate to talk about the gigabit opportunity zones at the meeting, and they said that was fine. So she sort of talked about it, so I'm not sure if those 2 efforts at some point will come together or not. And so I mentioned the 2 committees, and then there's another committee tasked with sort of just doing some research and evaluation of barriers to broadband around the country. So I feel like that group is probably going to be more research and maybe a report talking about the landscape. There's another group that's dealing with competitive access. I think that they're dealing a lot with pole attachments and things. I'm only in, at this moment, the state code conversations directly, but I do talk to the chairs and vice chairs of the other committees. The 5th committee was a little bit slow starting, and that's the federal siting committee, so looking at federal siting, which I think we're all very interested in. And I'm not sure what the direction that committee will take, and they were just formed. I think they only announced their membership maybe a month and a half ago. And so they are off to a later start. But the goal at the November 9th meeting, and I think that they're being very serious about the goal, is for at least those initial 4 committees to have drafts of their documents. So so they would have like an actual draft that will come before the BDAC at that point. So I would pay attention to that meeting because that's kind of the first look that people will get at what the different committees have been producing so far. So content-wise, I think that's going to be kind of a first step. And then I'm not sure what the next step is after that, but I know that we're on a very hard deadline to get first drafts out by November 9th. So there's a lot of calls going on right now. Any questions? And keep in mind these if you look at the composition of the committees, there's a lot of private industry people, some academic, some city, a a little bit of state representation, but not a whole lot of city and state representation. One of the things that some of the feedback that the FCC has gotten very specifically is that they want more city feedback, and so they actually have added one or two. They've added a few people here and there to balance that out a little bit. But that's sort of where we are with the DDAC right now, and we'll see. And the initial appointments are 2 years, and so we know that they have a plan for 2 years, and we know what's happening up to, producing these first drafts. So that's where we're at. And you can also watch those hearings live, and I think there probably are recordings of them, but they're all being live streamed. And there's actually some really good conversation going on in the meeting, so I would definitely encourage you to watch that. So yeah, up next, let's have Gordy come up and talk about where we are with FirstNet.
Good morning, everybody. The last time we met, I think we were talking about it. We just received our draft state plan, and we were in the process of reviewing. I can't remember if we were done with it by then, but we finished the review. We submitted comments to FirstNet. We've had a couple subsequent meetings from then with AT&T and FirstNet. Expressed some of our concerns and some additional coverage areas. AT&T has come back and agreed to that. I can't remember if we talked about that last time, but
I don't know if that's public or I don't know.
Well, I probably can't tell you the details of it, but they did agree to add some additional new site builds over the ones that they'd offered in the draft plan. So we submitted our comments and submitted the plan, and then we've been waiting for the final plans to come out. But I guess that was scheduled for the 19th, and they weren't able to do that. We did get an update to the portal. They updated a lot of the sections of the draft plan to show some of the things that we talked about, some of the areas that we were concerned with. They've added some things. Right now, they're waiting on the NTIA to come in with the funding levels for a state that would opt out. So there's the NTIA will have some funding, grant funding for states that successfully opt out to help them start the build out of their radio access network in their state. But those funding levels haven't been determined yet, and so until they're determined, they can't give a final state plan, because that was one of 3 requirements that were in the law that had to be met before they could issue the final state plan. So NTIA has told us they'll have that forthcoming. They didn't give a timeline. They said in the near future is what they said. So once that happens, then the governor will get his final state plan. So because of that, on June 19th, it was supposed to start the governor's 90-day decision clock. That's been delayed until the NTIA can bring that information in. So the 90-day clock hasn't started. So we'll wait and see what NTIA say about that. We did meet with Governor Herbert last Friday. Lynn Yoakum and I and Dave Edmonds, our director, sat down with Governor Herbert, talked to him about some of his concerns, answered some questions. I think got him feeling a little more comfortable with this. He did indicate that he was going to move forward with an opt-in. He had a couple of items that he wanted to address before he did the formal opt-in, but that's where he's headed. So we'll be opting into the FirstNet program and letting AT&T come in and build a network. So good news. I think we felt that all along. So yes, they did. Yeah, Texas did as well. So what do we have? 20 states and 1 territory. 21 states now, and 2 territories. Okay. So people are moving in, and we're on our way. So I think the governor will be there. I have received several letters from Navajo Nation urging us to opt in, because New Mexico and Arizona have opted in, so they want to make sure that Utah's in on that. And in fact, I just got another letter from Delegate Begay this morning. So, and I passed those up to the governor. I know they want to meet with the governor, and I think they're working on that. So. That was one of the things the governor wanted to tie up before he finished before he submitted the letter to opt-in. He wanted to meet with the tribes and make sure that your concerns were met, and that you felt like you've been engaged in this process. That's where we're at. We do have a meeting scheduled today with the review team. We're going to go over the updates that happened in the portal. So we'll discuss that. I don't see anything coming out of that would make us stand up and say, oh, we can't do this. So I think that an opt-in is coming quickly here. So any other questions we have to answer?
And I'll just add that I think that there have been some really good discussions about areas, I think, that there are many, you know, that looking at sort of the landscape without giving detail, there are, you know, many areas of the state that will have some increased coverage, and I think AT&T's been pretty responsive to, you know, I mean, I don't think we can expect every single corner of the state to be covered, but I think that there were some key areas that were negotiated back and forth to a favorable outcome.
Yeah, and AT&T's been very willing to work with us on that, and so I think they're a good partner. So we're looking forward to moving forward. Well, yeah, it doesn't make much sense from our perspective to be in the broadband business. So I'm sure the governor feels the same way. So, so we'll be moving forward.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Jeff? Come on up.
So I'm Jeff Egley with the Utah Education and Telehealth Network, representing Ray Timothy, who can't be here today. One of the main updates we want to provide is we continue to focus and push on an effort that we have tied to what's called E-rate modernization, an opportunity through USAC. The first project we're really leaning on right now is that we've discussed with this group before is a 70-mile fiber project connecting from Vernal over into both Manila and Dutch John. And we applied for that, submitted for that over a year ago, and both UETN and Strata have answered numerous questions. There's been a lot of back and forth with USAC on this project, and we're getting to a point where we've been very anxious to actually get the ear of Chairman Pai, and through the support of both Senator Hatch's office as well as letter of support from Governor Herbert and Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox, Ray Timothy and Dennis Sampson and Melinda Brereton, who's on the E-rate side, will be meeting with Chairman Pai late next week. Just in the side conversation with Dave, it sounds like you may be heading back there as well. So we're anxious to see this to a successful conclusion. It's been more than lonely trying and challenging, and Strata, for one, has been great to continue to support this effort as well and work with us and the SLB. There's a lot tied to this because we're waiting in the wings. We want to also proceed on improvements down in San Juan County, south of Blanding, and it's really the success of the Daggett project that will determine how we proceed with the effort in San Juan. And Shirley, just to update you, after the tribal leader meeting in Pocatello, also followed back up with Clarence Rockwell, who is the chair for the Utah Navajo Commission. He wanted an update on that. I submitted an update and provided that to Mr. Rockwell as well as to the Utah tribe, so that they're in the loop as to what's going on in that. So more to come in this next meeting. We should have Ray available to come and update and discuss where we are. Kelly, you've been great. You know, you reached out to USAC and the FCC.
Yeah, I've had some calls with the FCC of late, so.
So it's been very trying, and we are just going to continue to push and see this to a successful conclusion. I can say nationwide, this has been a challenge. Over half of these applications have been denied. And so we're anxious to see what it's gonna take, to see if we can get over that hurdle
Over
with
half have
you,
been
Sept.
denied.
Yeah, that's my understanding, so. Some of the other things going on is this fall is when we gear up for our annual RFP for broadband services, and some of the notable things that will be in that is the RFP will be 100 gig from St. George to Las Vegas for Internet 2, and so that'll be coming up in the RFP. We have additional capacity that we'll be focusing on in the Alpine School District this year. We're also working with, we work with many of the Head Starts around the state, and we're expanding our efforts with the Southern Utah University Head Start program, and we'll be working with them, and in the RFP we'll have additional circuits for that program, no less than 6 additional gigabit service circuits will tie in Head Starts in the southwest part of the state. You can look for that probably October timeframe, I believe that'll be coming out. This is the best time if you have some questions to reach out to us. Obviously, we can't visit once we go into RFP, but just to give you a heads up. And then Dennis should be pushing out the date for a pre-bidders conference also. So as you go through the RFP, if you have some questions, we encourage you to attend that. I think he'll also include a WebEx option with that as well. Next week, I failed to mention, also while in Washington, D.C., Ray and the group will be meeting with Senator Hatch's office, also scheduled to meet with Representative Stewart's office, Representative Bishop's. I believe they're also working with the Seven County Infrastructure Coalition, or Mike McKee, to see if we can establish a meeting with no, I've just drawn a blank, Senator Lee's office, so we're working on that as well. Also do a plug, UTN takes a big role in the St. Con Security Conference. That's in October of every year. It's at the Utah Valley Convention Center, October 10th to the 13th. Yeah, a lot of attendance from those within higher education, K-12, but also some from government and outside entities. And get online and just search St. Con, you'll see that. It's a great conference. I know the keynote speaker is former security communication director for Facebook, I think now working for Uber, but you'll see the list of presenters and discussions that will be going on there. So I think that's the primary update that I have for this meeting. Any questions regarding any items? Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Do you know when the comments are due? Okay. Okay. I have not started drafting. Actually, that's a good question to throw out. Do you think that we should comment? Is there anybody that feels strongly that we should make a comment?
Sorry, the layperson on why they would do that and what that means.
Well,
So they have a standard of 25 megabits, and they're talking about lowering it to 10. On the note of federal comments, there also is a notice of proposed rulemaking on mapping right now. We've submitted comments from our office encouraging the FCC to look at allowing providers to submit more on a more granular level than the census blocks that they've been doing. So, similar to what sort of NTIA was doing, before, is the recommendation that we've made. And we've, and actually, the map of the month will illustrate why we have submitted comments on that, so that we can, and especially, the biggest concern is there's so many federal programs that are basing funding on the coverage levels, and expanding to the census block, especially in rural areas. There's a fear of areas not getting funding in future programs because they're showing coverage that isn't. Well, it's a little bit different issue than speed. It's more of a geographical issue. Yeah, it's a little bit different issue. Yeah. Mhm. Right, 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 right. Okay, okay. Okay, okay. Okay, if you have a position and you want to send it to me, I haven't decided that we are going to submit, so let me know what thoughts are, and we'll take it through. So, okay, with that, let's go to map of the month. Albert, come up. Map of the month. Yeah. Have a cell phone pulled up.
Okay, as is tradition, I'm keeping you from lunch, so I'll try and make this quick.
You got 20 minutes. I give you
It's
a
20
lot
minutes.
more
Well,
time than I usually do.
Okay, great. There's a call to provide lunch,
Right, yeah,
so
okay.
put that on the list. All right. Oh, you got them all already. Making my job easier. So, as Kelly mentioned, we kind of picked up a topic that we looked at back in October of 2014, which is when the FCC set their reporting requirements for the Form 477 submissions that providers make to the FCC. I think we correctly predicted that the landscape of what had service in Utah was going to change, especially in the periphery of rural communities. And part of that's because the census block geographic unit is in remote parts of the state is so big in Utah. So this map basically shows the coverage that's been reported to the state for fixed broadband technologies. And then if you use the FCC's methodology, which is if any portion of a census block is covered with service, then count that as covered. If you expand that coverage that was reported at a more granular level to the census block, then you get the darker blue map of coverage. And then we've got some address points on the map shown in red, which appear to be covered under the FCC reporting model for the map data that really, at the state level, at the more granular level that providers are reporting to us, have yet to be covered. So the Map of the Month blog post is up there. It looks at this both across fixed broadband technologies, but then also it also shows how each, we actually made a map that kind of breaks it down to for cable, for DSL, for fiber, and also for fixed wireless. I'm not used to your trackpad. So, there's the DSL map, and you can see the contrast between the actual physical coverage that's reported at that granular level and how that translates into these large block areas. Yeah.
The lighter blue is what's being reported to us on state level. Yeah. So the providers do not have a mechanism to report anything more granular, even if they want to at this point. And we have submitted those maps to the FCC. There's one that's 947. Yeah, there's a 947.
Yeah. So, I'll just, quote from the blog post, which is actually quoting from what we did in October 2014. It's important to remember that these two data formats represent the exact same broadband coverage on the ground. They just employ a different level of granularity, and the differences have nothing to do with what the providers are reporting, but how they are asked to report to the FCC. So that's the September map of the month. And since I've been met since July, I'll just really quickly cover the August map of the month was basically profiling a website that UDOT has called UPlan. We talked about that briefly in July, but it has on it specific links to their online interactive fiber map, to their unified transportation plan map, some of their other construction project information, average annual daily traffic map for all of the major roads in Utah. They've modeled how many vehicles are passing by each segment, and then their milepost reference system, and the beginnings of the state right-of-way database, so all the land that UDOT has rights-of-way on. Lynn, I don't know, I'll just invite you to comment on that, but I think it's a great resource. All these interactive maps that UDOT puts forward are a great resource, and probably, I kind of picked there are a lot more than that. I picked the ones that I thought would be of particular interest to folks working on broadband policy planning or the providers themselves. And I'm not sure what was going on.
Now, you guys did the virtual academy map.
I was going to pull that up really
Yeah.
quickly. So last year in June, the gentleman from Utah Virtual Academy showed a map, and it didn't show up very well on the screen. So we actually helped them with those maps. Come on.
Sometimes
back in June of 2016, and this is maybe a little bit better view of the distribution of the students who are enrolled at that charter school around the state. So that's in the June map of the month. And then there's one other thing that I wanted to show that is relevant to what we talked about today. I think it's on the front page of First, if I could spell FirstNet. Did I spell it right? Yes. Front and center on the firstnet.gov page is the dashboard map of states that have opted in. Let's see if that loads. I have to make it a little small. There we go. So firstnet.gov has the current up-to-date dashboard for states that have state plans that are under review in blue, and then the states that have opted in green, and the ones that have opted out are in gray, which is not a color they've had to use in the map yet. So I thought that might be of interest to folks. That's what I've got.
Awesome.
Okay.
Do you have anything else they want to say? We can end a few minutes early. It's fine. Yeah, Sheila? Sure. This isn't really associated with the mobility fund at all. This is just reported broadband coverage to the state versus how it's reported to the FCC.
But I mean, I think that's one of the issue areas that this map hopefully will, or this type of mapping can inform, because as different federal programs are looking to make a difference in those areas, that Form 477 data at a national level is the most current data that they go to, and it has some inherent issues. And one point that I made in the blog is that the FCC is very aware of the inherent limitations of what they're doing right now. And in the, I can't remember what the jargon is for the public comment, further notice for proposed rulemaking, they very specifically lay out what they think is wrong with their approach, and then they say, and we'd like you to comment on this. So, yeah, I think the evidence, the proof is kind of in the pudding. The evidence in how they're asking for comments seems to indicate that they know that this approach is not going to optimally inform decision making. That's going to lead to incentives and other policy to better connect these remote parts of the country.
And then another part of the questioning is that, as you may have noted, since the NTIA SBI program ended, there hasn't been an updated national broadband map. So there's no online being updated mapping tool, and that was one of the questions that they asked too, is just how they should display data. From conversations that I've had with FCC staff over the past 3 years, I think they originally had intended to do a map, and then there was a funding barrier to doing it. And so I'm wondering if these questions are to support getting funding to do some sort of mapping interface. This is what this is showing.
That's what it's
That's
showing.
what this is showing.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't look over my head, but this light blue area is what we have in the state broadband map. This is the extra area that gets added on when you translate it into the format that they've prescribed. So I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear. I've been looking at these maps for a few weeks now, and maybe I glossed over that.
Yeah, and we've appreciated providers being willing to submit this more refined data, because I know that submitting it twice is there's a time constraint on that, and we appreciate that. And eventually it might get to the point where they are doing it to a level that is adequate, but right now I'm appreciative of it.
And standing offer to all providers, if you want to submit us your actual coverage, we will translate that into a list of census blocks that you can use for your 477 submission. We've done that for a number of folks.
Great. Does anybody have any other questions or things they want to go over?
To this map? This, it's up.
Yeah, it went up in August, so it might be further down on the list. If you'll probably have to do a search for it for August map of the month. It should be up there.
Yeah, Kelly's got the site pretty well search engine optimized, so if you type in Utah broadband, UDOT map of the month, I think you'll get it.
August 2017.
You probably don't need that, but just a few keywords and Utah broadband should find most of these.
Well, again, thank you everybody for being here.
Thanks.